Welcome, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome not to the studio today, but to beautiful Los Osos, California. And here I am. I've hiked out a little ways. I found a tree to sit under, and I'm going to paint that tree in front of me. I just want to let you see a little bit of what I'm looking at today, because you're going to be spending the majority of the time looking at that as we develop that together. So let me get through some of the supplies I'm using. These are my M-gram paints. I'm starting today with a Princeton Neptune paintbrush, and I am using my Strathmore Visual Journal 140-pound watercolor paper, spiral bound. There it is. And as I put a little paint on paper here, I will just tell you, again, this location is in Los Osos, California, just at the edge of the Back Bay. I had to walk, almost a half a mile to get here through that sand that you saw and the sand that you see at my feet there. And an interesting fact about that, when I got to the trailhead to walk out here, there happens to be a sign that says, "Warning, unexploded ordnance in the area." And even though I've been here before, every time I see that sign, I kind of do a double take and say, do I really want to go out there? And yeah, so far the answer has always been yes, just like today, which brings us to where we are. Okay, so let's talk about what we're doing here. I've got my picture drawn on, and I'm just lightly putting on the background. I've done a little sky, and that sandy area on the other side of the water is actually called the sand spit. It just juts out for like a mile and separates the bay from the Pacific Ocean, and so that's in my background. I've just done it very lightly. We're going to be able to see that through the tree in front maybe a little bit, but I don't want it to overpower any of the tree that's going to be in front of that. And I'm just putting in a little water line. The tide has gone down just a little bit here this morning, leaving a little bit of darker line right above the water. I'm just going to drop in a quick bit of greenery. I know you saw the video. There's not a whole lot of green this time of year. Our rains won't come in earnest for, almost a month now. But I'm going to drop a few in there. I don't want to put too much. I want it to be pretty plain back there. Again, behind the trees. Not a whole lot of detail. I'll save my detail work for the front here. And I'm just dropping in some base color on this side of the bay. There we go. Just a quick mix. I'm working with cobalt green here and a little bit of yellow ochre. There we go, just pulling that out like that. Looks good. And the hillside in front of me. There we go. And it's mostly yellow ochre here. I am going to mix in a little bit of yellow iron oxide and a little bit of orange iron oxide just to vary it a little bit. And again, that green that I'm using is a cobalt green. There we go. Just like that. That's my yellow iron oxide I just dipped into. And I'm just blocking in a little bit of color here. I'm going to come back, or we're going to come back and fix that up in just a bit. But before we do that, I've got to paint the trees first. I've got my water down to my right hand side, which is what I'm going down there for, and also my brushes. I've just changed to one of the Winsor Newton brushes. I believe this one is a number 6. And I'm going to mix up a little bit of gray color. Now this tree that is here is a eucalyptus tree, and their bark sheds year round, and if you look closely at them, they've got all kinds of crazy colors in there. From reds and oranges, some yellows, even some greens and blues as that bark sheds and comes off of there. They're really, really nice. Before I do that, though, there is a tree that pokes out behind this one. I'm just going to drop in a few leaves for it here. Again, not a whole lot of detail. I'm not going to come back and do anything with these leaves. They're back there. They're not the focus of the painting. So I want to have them in there, but they're going to be very faint. Maybe just a little bit more intense than the background behind it, but not much more. What we're really looking for are some of these tree trunks and the branches that are going to go on there to be really nice. That's going to be the focus of the whole painting. So here we go. I've got my gray and I'm going to mix into it from time to time. Some oranges, some yellows, the red that I've got there. And just go with that. I'm just drawing up, trying to stay mostly within the lines of my painting. Drawing up the tree trunk here, and I'll fill in the blocks as I go. Here's one behind. And each time I paint a different tree trunk with these, I'm going to try to vary the color just ever so slightly. And here we go. I was worried as I was painting this that I was holding my paints too far over top of the paper and you wouldn't be able to see it, but it looks like for the most part you can see exactly what I'm painting there. Not too bad of a job. There we go. I'm just starting at the base of the branch and pulling out just to make some nice long thin branches. And here's another one. You can see that I've added a little bit more red to this one. Could have added really any of the colors that belong with these tree trunks, and it would have worked out fine. This is the first layer we're going to go over. There's a little ochre I've added in. So just varying the colors of these. And here's one that's behind. This old stand of trees must have 8 or 10 tree trunks, all in all, just all bundled right together, coming out of the same spot. They're all gnarled and just mangled together. Looks to me like maybe a storm has come through and knocked over part of this tree at some point. I don't know what the whole story of this tree is, but it's a really neat looking tree. And I thought maybe I would just have to paint this for us. So that's why I'm sitting here. And here we go. I should say, as we're doing this, the sand is so soft where I chose that my seat is slowly sinking. Each time I move, I probably drop into the sand another 1/4 of an inch. So while I'm trying to paint, I'm actually trying to be very careful too, not to move too much because I don't want to fall over. Now my little brush holder has fallen over. I just picked it up there. You saw me flick off something. That was a little bit of sand that were on the bristles. I switched to a rigger brush here. Just going to help me draw these branches out a little bit better. There we go. Ooh, straight up there. And I used to just draw my branches and put them all in their own space. And then I was thinking, well, that's one way to do it, but that's not really how trees are. So in here, I'm trying to cross these branches a bit more. I don't want it to get too crazy, but I do want to cross these branches to make this tree look a little bit more realistic. Again, my style of painting is not to be photorealistic or anything like that, but from time to time, I can make it look a little more realistic, and I think that would help improve the painting a little bit. So that's what I'm doing here. And there we go. I'm just continuing to add branches, pull them out, dip into the color, vary the color a little bit, add some branches. Now these branches, many of these branches are going to get covered up with our leaves, but I want to have the base in there so where we can see the branches later on, they're already going to be there. We don't have to go back and fill them in. This is just the first layer that we're putting on here. We're going to come back more and more and add layer after layer after layer. Mixing a little bit of blue. I should say that blue is a little bit of turquoise blue, I believe, that I dipped into on accident. I meant to go into the ultramarine blue, but never mind, we'll just forge ahead and use what we've got. That's fine. I've switched back to a little bit of a bigger brush and over dipped into my red that I was using. I believe that is a Pyrrol red. That's pretty bright. And I'm just darkening up with the shadow side of all of these tree trunks and tree branches in here. There we go. I may have to go back and add a little bit more onto these too. In fact, I'm sure I will, because I've seen the video before and I actually did the painting. So I think I know I'm going to be back at this spot, but I'm just darkening up a little bit. I'm putting down a nice little bit of paint, marking the edge of where I want my shadow, the hard edge that I want my shadow, and then going back with just a slightly damp brush on the opposite side to draw those colors out a little bit and give the tree trunk, in this case, a little bit of a rounded feel to it. There we go. And you can see that part I just painted is where the tree trunk actually goes into the ground. A big shadow down there. And there we go. Just softening up the inside edge of that shadow. I keep looking up at the camera. I can't tell if it's on or not. I know I've got a bit of battery on this camera. I don't know how much, so I need to keep checking. And it doesn't look like it in this picture, but this is quite a windy day. And that's part of the reason why I'm huddled down behind this tree, is to stay out of the wind. And just doing a little bit of work. The majority of this painting is working on this tree. It just comes out so nice. Keep working it and working it and working it. Adding shadow, adding color. Just going back over it time and time again. It really makes it start to look nice. You can see as I'm building up the colors there, when I get my palette out of the way, you can see as it's building up these colors that it's really giving these branches a lot of definition and really filling out this painting. There we go. Just continue to work it, continue to work it, continue to work it. Now I should say, I have been out to this spot. I don't know if I said this earlier. I have been out to this spot a number of times on this trail. And today when I walked out here, I was surprised somebody has carried a park bench out here. And it's about a half a mile out to where I'm at. Somebody carried a park bench out there, and there was something on it. I couldn't tell what it was. So I, of course, walked up to it. I sat on it for, a good 10 minutes or so and looked out over the bay and enjoyed a nice cup of coffee while I was there. And somebody put on it a pillow. It's a department store pillow, a throw pillow. It's got some nice sparkle on one side and some nice felt or some kind of soft fabric on the back side of it. I don't know. I thought it was rather funny that somebody has, one, bothered to bring this bench all the way out there, and two, they're going to bring out this glittery kind of pillow and leave it out there. I don't know. I was just kind of tickled about the whole thing. It was one of the things that really made me decide to paint this with the bench underneath this tree. I should disclose that as I started to draw this up, I started with the bench and drew it, and as I drew everything else, I realized I did make my bench a little small, and what I wanted to have be the focal point of this whole painting, just peeking out from behind this tree, really was a little bit smaller than it needs to be. And here we go. I finally sunk into the sand so far that I can't sit straight anymore, and it's really quite difficult to paint. These are part of the challenges that you have when you go out and paint plein air. It was really an interesting time to try to do this, and trying to situate myself here. I think we've got it a little bit now. I hope I don't get my head too far in the way. I'll try to keep my head out of view. There we go, on the far side of the path. I want to put in a little bit of detail, not a whole lot of detail. But while I'm waiting for my tree trunks to dry up nicely, I'm just going to put a little something over there. And you can see that the day has gotten quite a bit sunnier since I've sat down. It's also warmed up quite a bit in the 15 minutes or 20 minutes that I've been sitting here, and the paints on the paper are drying quite a bit faster, and also the paints on my palette are drying quite a bit faster than they had when I started this painting. So I'm trying to adjust to that and painting a little bit faster still. Again, that's one of the quirky, interesting things that happens when you're not in a controlled environment. It adds quite a bit of challenge and makes it quite a bit more fun, actually. I've started just taking my paints with me and painting out and about in my town, not even filming anything, just taking them out to sit down and enjoy painting with people walking around and outside and fighting the elements and doing whatever I can. And if anybody's brave enough to do it, I would totally encourage it. There's one aspect of it that I find completely fascinating. It's that people, if you're doing it where people are going to be at, people don't know how to react to you. They don't know if they should stop and look. They don't know if they should stop and talk. They don't know if they should ignore you and walk around. And consequently, you can peek at people out of the corner of your eye and whatnot and see them. Some people will come up and they'll try to peek at you out of the side of their eye so you don't see that they're looking at you. And they're the funny ones. And then you have people who want to come up and find out what you're doing, and they want to sit and talk with you. You have people that will huddle around you and ask if you're from there, I don't know, all kinds of different questions. I painted on the waterfront in my town over the weekend, and I bet I had 50 to 80 people walk past me. I'll say I had 10 people stop and say something, and I'll bet you I had 30 people that would come up to me and slow down, real slow, and look and look and look, and then as soon as they were past, then they could speed up and walk faster. Okay, anyways, enough of my rambling on. I'm just dropping in a few weeds and reeds and jagged things here and there, something to give some definition to the foreground. I've left kind of a large foreground, and that's okay, but I need to fill it up with something. I could have moved the tree down further, done more leaves. I could have, there are lots of things I could have done, but I'm just going to put some detail in here. I have a flat brush that I'm working with right now, and you know, it's good for making some straight lines, and far as I can tell, weeds kind of grow in straight lines. So I thought, well, I'll just use that and push it on there, and I'll get some lines here and there. And so as I'm doing this, I'm just dropping in some lines, and then I'll wet my brush a little and rub it back over and take some of those lines off, and I'll make some bigger, more swooping lines. Maybe there's a little bit of a hill there, and so a bigger, more solid line we'll make a little bit of a hill, not a hill, but a little bit of a mound in the front and whatnot. So anyways, back to the painting. What are we doing here? I've got a little bit in the foreground there, and I want to make that a little bit more intense. I could make it a little bit more red also, just a hint of red in there. That would help to pull all that forward. The more intense, the more color there is on the bottom portion of that painting, the more that's going to pull that to you as a viewer. And red, of course, does that also. So I want to do a little bit of that. I could have put a little bit of red. I think I said that. Here I go. I'm just mixing up a little bit of my paints, some cobalt green, a little bit of yellow ochre. I'm going to mix in a little bit of olive green in here too, but I'm going over very lightly. I want to wet this. You can see my paint is very, very soupy. And I want to get on a base of color. It doesn't need to be covering everything, but a base of color, and those are going to be my leaves. And then I'm going in with a little sap green and a little bit of olive green. And now I'm really going to determine where these clusters of leaves are at. And where I think they're at, I'm going to drop in a little bit of this darker, richer color. There we go. I'm just going back and recharging my brush. And I've gone back to my Princeton Neptune, quite a large brush. I believe it's a number 10 here. And I'm just charging the area where I believe those leaves are at. And what I'm doing is I'm defining a group of leaves where the darker color is on the underside, on the shadow side of those. Oh, and I just noticed the sun seems to have moved again, where my whole painting was in sunlight a few minutes ago, a scant 6 minutes ago. You can see now we have a shadow that crosses the painting that we're doing there. So I'm just dropping these in. You can drop these in for quite a long time. As long as your paper is staying a little bit moist, you can continue to add on and add on and add on. And while I'm doing this, I'm going to put in a few more little dots of paint here and there, maybe individual leaves, and just get picked up a little bit more. Okay, I've done all of my big major areas. I'm going back to my Winsor Newton brush, adding a little bit of yellow in there. I believe that was gamboge, just changing up the color so it's not the same color over the same color over the same color. And here you go. I'm following the general pattern that I started with when I started putting in the darker color. And I'm expanding on that a little bit with the little tiny dots, the little individual leaves. That's what they're going to turn out to be. And then I'm just filling in with even more color, even more pigment in those darker areas where they're still wet, and that's gonna flow around and make a real nice area of leaves on that tree. You can see, and you can do this as much as you want. And now you can see how when I make it darker like that, it covers up the branches that I've already painted, and I don't have to worry about going and trying to paint a branch that went behind a group of leaves there or anything. So it just makes it a little bit easier. And here we go, just finishing this up. Oh, let's see, a little bit more. What am I doing? Some yellow iron oxide, a little sap green, and olive green there. I know what I need to do. I just noticed I need to make this front right here, the part at the very bottom, a bit more intense to bring that even further forward, push that tree back a little bit. There we go. And you can see I'm not doing any specific line. I'm dropping it on there. It's just a weedy mess in there. I'm going to let the viewer's eye tell them what it really is. I've got to do one last thing. I've got a chair in there that I didn't do much with, trying to set my paints down on a spot where they won't be in the sand. And I'm going to pull out some watercolor pencils. Here they are. I'm going to open those up the wrong way. and just pull something out to define that bench back there. And that's the last thing I'm going to do on this painting. I hope you guys enjoyed this. I enjoyed painting. I had a blast while I was out there doing it. I'm sorry I had to do the voiceover, but again, very windy out there. I hope you gained something from this. I will see you next time. There we go. Maybe back in the studio, maybe out about town. Thanks so much for joining me here on Watercolors with Michael.